So, what is the female gaze? Well, theoretically, incredibly straightforward, does what it says on the tin. It represents the gaze of the female viewer, so it's used as a feminist film term. It was developed in response to Professor of Film and Media Studies Laura Mulvey's term, the male gaze, which of course represents not only the gaze of a heterosexual male viewer, but also the gaze of a male creator and the male character in a film, which is, let's be frank, or indeed Francis, still the predominant view. Right, let's take a quick look at some facts before we have a lot more fun with the panel. In 2014, a report was done by Who Is Calling the Shots, and it showed that channels 1 to 5, only 27% of all episodes of content were directed by women. Move on, a couple of years, 2016, had things improved? No, it was actually lower. There was an overall decline in the number of television episodes directed by women, with Channel 4 seeing the very biggest decrease, minus 5.4%. Anyway, the good news is it woke them up. Channel 4 Factual have now been leading the way of changing this since 2016 in an industry with over 50% directors used being females for singles and limited series. So good to see some progress in some areas, although others are lagging far behind. It is not all cheery. If you look at drama, for example, it's a measly 21% of dramas were directed by women. So let's find out why it matters and who is going to shake things up. I have huge confidence in our wonderful panel. We have already been chatting, and the range of things we've talked about, I feel we're in safe hands. Investigative journalist and producer Poppy Begum, who we have with us today, will be directing Queens. Can I just say that I'm going to tell you what people are doing, but it's embargoed. From whom, I don't know. I wasn't told that bit. I have only limited information. So if I tell you something, it's embargoed. There you go. Poppy Begum will be directing Queens, which I believe is a working title, which will tell a radically different story of rap that puts women at the music's creative centre. Channel 4 dives into the world of online sex work in Have I Got Nudes for You? Working title, where writer and presenter Alex Sim Wise and award-winning producer and video artist Rosemary Baker explore the online sex industry in what is described as an unflinching and provocative hour-long documentary. Alex and Rosemary are both joining our panel today. And finally, in a slightly different subject matter, director, writer, producer Jenny Ash, who is also with us, is directing a 3-part documentary series, Osama, The Inside Story, working title, exploring the life of the man who went on to become the thing you don't want to be, the most hunted terrorist in the world. So there we go. Poppy, I'm going to start with you. I was asked to begin by asking why it has taken until 2021 for us to discuss the underrepresentation of women on and off screen. I have to tell you it isn't. I hosted an entire evening about this at the BBC about a quarter of a century ago. So what I want to know is, what is it about now that should stop me just feeling depressed?
I think that I think people are scared now. I think we've got cancel culture. I know we were just before we went on air, we were talking about the negative effects of social media. But I think now we live in an age where it's so easy to call people out. It's easy to call people accountable, to hold people accountable. And I think in a post-Me Too, post-BLM moment and movement, people are just tired and bored. And I think certainly my colleagues, female colleagues, feel much more emboldened to speak out. So I think, the fact that we're doing yet another panel about women in TV is pretty much, in 2021, pretty much says it all. But I think, people are just pissed off now. I think we're just tired and we want to sort of blow the doors down. And I know you can say what you will about cancel culture, but I do think one of the more positive aspects of it is that it's all out there, one tweet and you're over, which is bad, but also has its benefits.
Well, I hope you're right. I'm always would look towards the positive. Rose, there does seem to be some movement at the moment towards gender equality, but there's always a worry, isn't it, that it's it's a bit of a fashion, and in 5 years' time, the commissioners will think, "Oh, we did that. That was so 2021, and now we've ticked that box, and now we need to move on." What do you think, Rose?
Well, you have to hope that it isn't that, of course. I think I have been noticing an increased appetite for stories that are really specific to women's experiences. So, for example, in my career last year, I made a short film about lesbians and the language that lesbian women, queer women in general, have to describe themselves and the various kind of bits of baggage associated with that. And that's really not something that I could really have imagined being made 5 years ago, certainly not, when I was growing up, but, even as recently as 3 or 4 years ago, I don't think you could have made that film. So I am noticing there's an appetite and people starting to pay attention to really quite specific things that that allow women to speak in the first person and very honestly, and more so than we've ever been able to do before. I think you're right though, Sandi. There is always a worry that that it's a passing thing, but I think I feel pretty confident and robust that there is a change happening.
Great, I'm thrilled. What about you, Alex? Are you on the positive side?
What, with social media or?
No, just saying that you think that this change where women's stories are starting to be told is not just some fad, it's not just a moment, that actually we are going to see improvements.
You'd hope so, definitely. I mean, I think things have changed very much for women. I do think we're becoming more and more for myself, I'm a sexy content creator now. I used to be in mainstream TV. I feel like the world that I'm in is getting more and more marginalized. I mean, I've just had my Instagram deleted, and I just feel like the world for me is getting smaller, while women professionally are being taken more seriously. But I don't see why those two things have to happen. Like, why can't I exist at the same time as women are being taken seriously? Like, why can't I be taken seriously as well? I feel like that with sort of feminine discourse, it's like you have to hate on one woman to build up the other, and I feel like there's space for everybody.
Oh, depressing. So are you saying that when women express the sexual side of themselves, that's sometimes not okay?
I don't feel like it's okay at the moment, no. I do feel like, whereas 10 years ago it was too much, I think we've gone the other way now, and we're sort of trying to bury sexy women in a hole. And then there needs to be somewhere in the middle for things to work.
Jenny, before we came on, you were talking about some of the current stats about television. Didn't you have a stat about where we are at the minute?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Rose. I think there has been a really sort of seismic change for women I think especially with Me Too and Black Lives Matter. And I don't think it's going to go back. I think it's here to stay. But I also think we can't be complacent. I mean, in 2020, over 70% of television was directed by men, which is quite a sobering figure, isn't it? And, I think men and women are judged on their achievements. But I think men, especially like junior men, are judged on their potential much more than women. And I think that really needs to change. We need to all make a deliberate effort not to do that when we're hiring people who are sort of early on in their career in the industry.
I heard a great line in a film the other day. A woman said to another woman who was about to go and make a speech, "I want you to go out there with all the confidence of a mediocre white man." I just thought it was just a wonderful thing. You just think, oh yeah, that is actually.
I always joke to my friends, when I can be a mediocre white man, then it's equality, then it's a level playing field, because then you don't have to be 3 times as good. But you know what is depressing? It's like the fact that we're even saying, are we one half of the female species in TV a moment? Like, I won't let it be a moment. Like,
yes.
it's like, no, absolutely no way. Absolutely no fucking way. So we're not a moment. We're here to stay. And it's embarrassing and shameful that it's taken 2021 for us to even have a voice. But we're not a moment. We're here and we're not going.
Yeah, I believe you. I do. Jenny, you're directing a 3-part series about Osama bin Laden, and I just wonder why do you think women until now have rarely been given the opportunity to direct what I call the big global stories, 9/11, Grenfell, the Iraq War, and is it that there's a terrible anxiety we're all going to get too emotional and start weeping and not be able to get to the end?
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of women are, they're really seen as, they're often given really kind of soft subjects and, emotionally intelligent subjects, but not, the big award fodder films, which I really don't understand. But
So did you have an anxiety that the subject that you wanted to do that you might not be thought suitable?
No, I mean, no. I personally didn't, but I think a lot of, I just think it's all about opportunity, isn't it? I mean, I think that, if women are given the opportunity to make award fodder films, they will. But most high profile films are made by men. Like all the films about COVID were made by men. And I think women are often, they're sort of lots and lots of women producers. And that's because we're basically a kind of, we're just brilliant. We're brilliant at multitasking. We're emotionally intelligent. And I think often like male PDs gets sort of paired up with a female producer and supported by a producer. But it's really, I think it's hard for people to be, that women aren't seen as those kind of big, high-profile documentary makers that often. It's very rare.
So what does anybody have a view about how we can increase those opportunities, if that's what the problem is?
By just giving us the jobs. It's really simple. Like, just give us the jobs, basically.
It is
there's a commission, give us the job. It's that simple.
That's great.
I couldn't think of anything more simple.
I'm really with you on this. I'm like, just get on with it.
Don't give it to your list of special 12 white male directors that you go back to all the time because they're the ones that get the awards. Give it to us. See what happens.
So it's about, in their view, it's about taking a risk, and that would be wonderful, wouldn't it? It's about
which this industry is
but not seeing as a risk.
Risk-averse. Yeah, and not seeing this as a risk. This is it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Can I just say, anybody watching, you're really welcome to throw in some questions. It'll come up on some kind of a chat thing for me, because we would love to hear from you. So, Alex, let's just talk. We're talking about that you. What do you call it? Do you call it sexy content? Is that what you said? What is the?
Yeah, I mean, we just call it art has now become content, which some people love, some people hate, and we have mainstream content creators who are influencers, YouTubers, and then you have my little subsection, which is sexy content, and that could be anything from what Page 3 Girls used to do, which is, well, actually what I specialise in is tease content, which is more like burlesque, milfy fantasies than me putting things up my anus. But yeah, this is the little world that I'm in now. And it's a choice.
No,
I enjoy it.
I thought I'd done everything in television, Alex, but I've not done sexy content. So call me and we'll see where we go.
Yeah, and I had some trepidation about joining this panel because I thought, well, I'm not a filmmaker, but I did study film at university, and I use a lot of the skills that I learned in my content that I make. So the way I kind of see it is that as sex workers, we're usually at the forefront of new things. I mean, there is no art without sex workers. If you look at the history of cinema, I mean, it came from theatres, which came from prostitutes and courtesans. So there is this they're very linked as industries. And I think what I'm in right now is like the new independent filmmakers. Like, I really feel like we're going to get like the new Robert Rodriguez coming out of OnlyFans somehow, like, because we're learning so much and we're learning how to do everything just on our own. We have the access to equipment that we didn't have 10 years ago. I mean, when I was in university, I was never pushed in this direction. I was studying film and I was never pushed to be a filmmaker. I think if I was lucky, I might have been a film critic. It's only because modelling came along that I went this way instead. But I think it's really interesting that, I'm being given a voice on a panel like this, because I don't think that would have happened 10 years ago. So
I think, Alex, you're absolutely right. though. You are absolutely a filmmaker in just the same way as any of the rest of us sitting here on this panel. And I think what is really fascinating about what Alex does is she creates sexy content for a new platform, which is very difficult to learn how to operate, which bears really no similarities to the broadcast media or to the sort of old world of content creation. And it is all about storytelling. What you do, it is all about storytelling and production values and audience engagement. so all of those things which we all have to practice in the old world of filmmaking, you are doing in the new world. And while it is a different context, it is, I think, fundamentally what you're doing is the same thing.
But women have been objectified since day dot. I'm only going to presume that this kind of material stops that if you have more likely to stop that if you have a female director, or am I wrong about that?
Rosemary?
It's me. Sorry, Sandi. I
just handed it over to you, Alex. I mean, I just want to know if it matters in the kind of content that we're talking about, if it's a male or a female director. I'm going to imagine that it does.
In the sex work context?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, the best porn directors at the moment are women. They're the most creative. They come up with more ideas. Like, I think porn in the hands of men has become very formulaic and very boring. And when I think it's Erica Lust is a massive name in the porn industry at the moment, and the work that she does is just so much more aesthetically pleasing and challenging to watch than the stuff that you see directed by men.
I think for me, working on Alex with this film, I think I'm going to make a different film to the one that a man might have made. It's a film about sex workers, and let's be honest, the sex industry, the client base of the sex industry is men. So it's a film which is going to explore how people sexualize themselves for the male gaze in this industry. But the point of me as the director there is to capture everything else that is going on, and to capture the ways in which these women and men are sexualizing themselves, but also not sexualizing themselves, and to capture the humanity of that. So hopefully I can bring something to that. But what I think is also important to add is that, female directors are very, very diverse, and the film that I am making is going to be different to the film that another female director would have made about this subject. I think sex work is very polarizing to women across the piece, and there are a lot of different takes about sex work among women. Lots of women feel very strongly about it in very different ways. So I wouldn't want to sort of sit here and say I'm going to be making a woman's film about sex work, because I think really I can only promise to make my film about it, and there are lots and lots of women out there who would have different takes for this. So we're very diverse.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think all directors are, individuals. And, it doesn't really matter if you're a man or woman. But, I mean, obviously, you're all going to make different films, and some films, like I made a pair of films about vaginas and penises. And I'd made the film about vaginas, and then I was kind of quite reluctant at first to do the penis film. But I did, and I was really, I thought a man should make it in the same way as I've done the vagina film. But actually, I found that, like, for a lot of men, it was sort of so much easier to talk to a woman. So I think it did end up being a really different film. Men would rather pull their fingernails out than talk to each other about their bits, or, they never really sort of sit around and talk about relationship problems or vulnerability. So I think that really, made it a much more female. I mean, also the way I kind of visually tried to reflect that vulnerability. I think visually it was definitely quite a female way of looking at the penis. It was, I made the whole film in quite a stylized way. I shot the interviews in a disused swimming pool, and then got 3 divers to improvise naked underwater around the words. And the water allowed their sort of penises to roam and flop about, which I think was a really female way of looking at them, because men are definitely uncomfortable thinking about their willies as floppy. It's all about rigidity and reluctance to yield. So I think that female mode of fluidity and lack of borders, and it made this hard thing that men are really rigid about, soft and sort of yielding and negotiable and up for discussion. So Yeah, I think that's quite a good example of a film which would have been. I think a man would have made a great film as well, but it would have been very different, I think.
Yes, I
Synchronized
could
heart
imagine
pieces.
yeah, or a lot of pictures of Doric columns in Greek buildings reminding us, holding up the world in some way, I would imagine. Poppy, is there a danger when you approach a subject that, because sometimes the world is divided too easily into a binary thing, there's men's films and women's films, that they go, oh, it'll be a woman and she's going to do it in this way, that there's a presumption about the kind of film that you're going to make just because you're a woman, or instead of people just waiting to see what craft you as a person are going to bring to it?
I mean, it should be the latter, but it's always the former. So it'd be like, well, this is a film. This is a film about X, so a woman should make it. And sometimes a woman should make it, but at the moment it's not a level playing field, right? So there is certainly this danger, and I think often we do get pigeonholed. And often, like Jenny said earlier, we're not doing those big kind of global current affairs stories that are sort of BAFTA fodder. So I think, I don't know, there are seismic shifts, but I almost feel like it needs to go so much in the other direction, i.e. our direction, to prove that we can do it and do everything before we find a happy medium. I think, I don't have any kids. I was talking to the other ladies just before the panel. Like, I think having kids massively changes things for me, from what I've seen. And right now we need an industry that supports mothers, that supports young mums. And we just need to have a hand at trying out all these different genres, because right now it's too skewed one way, is what I think.
No, you're right. I think it's a serious issue. When my children I've got 3 kids, and when they were of school age, I deliberately took a job hosting a lunchtime radio show so that I could still drop them at school and pick them up, because television became unsupportable for me. I simply couldn't manage both things. It wasn't possible. Who are the parents amongst us? I mean, I've got to, as I said, I've got the 3. You guys, is there any difficulties, Alex, with balancing? You know, there's no creche services, are there, for females when they direct?
For me, I mean, I left the industry before I became a mother, so I never felt like I could go back into TV presenting once I had a kid, because it's such a commitment. I live in Devon, which is like miles away. So I never felt like it was something that I could go back to. So it's kind of why I've chosen what I've done now, because it's very flexible. I create on weekends and evenings, like I work it around. It allows me to be a mum, like a proper mum, you know, that's there. And, you know, I worked other jobs when she was born, and there was just nothing that compares to what I do now. It's just so flexible. I mean, when I first moved down to Devon and was pregnant, I was working at McDonald's. So, you know, I've done a lot of different jobs. But yeah, I think the need to be there and to be able to pick them up from school, that's a massive, massive one for me. Like, she motivates pretty much everything I do. So
yeah, quite right too. We've had a question in from Dominic Walker. Do the panel think part of the problem is when women have children, they bow out of directing? And unless it's addressed radically, it won't change. Do you think that's right, Jenny? I
think it's so hard to pay for childcare and have any kind of freelance career. I mean, especially if you're not an established director and you're still working your way up. I mean, I've got quite a few friends who are my age who say, oh, you know, I definitely would have had kids if I didn't work in TV, and I think that's so sad. I mean, I think it's partly in this country, childcare I think it's the second most expensive country in the world, childcare or something. So it's kind of systemic, but yeah. I mean, I think I personally won't work for companies who won't let me have some flexibility. I just, you know, I'm always really upfront because I'm a single mum, and you know, I need to have that flexibility to work. And actually COVID in some ways has kind of hurtled us, you know, 10 years into the future, I think, because
definitely.
You know, suddenly, you know, like with my editor, he's got kids as well. You know, in the middle of the afternoon, he'll go and pick up his kid, and then we'll work later. And, you know, it just works so well when you're kind of making films in your kitchen and, you know, making it work around your kids. That's really good. But I think also there's a real thing, especially for women, and men rarely have that question. When do you tell an employer you're pregnant so it doesn't mess up your career. And I know, like when I was pregnant, I was making adverts, and I was literally 8 months pregnant with a massive jumper, because I just thought there's no way. I mean, adverts are even worse than TV. It's like 4% of directors are women, and I just thought there's no way that I'm going to get this job if they know I'm pregnant. But just to go on a more positive note, my other experience of pregnancy was with ITV, and I was doing something for them when I was kind of 6 months pregnant or something, and one of the execs said, was trying to get me to do another film, and I kept on saying, no, I'm not going to be available then, but being a bit shifty about why not. And finally, we were in this big meeting, and they just said to me, look, can you just, be honest? We thought it would be really up your street, but, just be honest if you don't want to do it. And I just lifted up my jumper and showed them my pregnant stomach. And what was really nice about that is they just said, you know what, we're going to keep this film for you. Come back when you've had your baby. We don't care if it's 3 months, 6 months, a year, whenever it suits you. And, I'll never forget that kind of care and kindness that, that group of people showed me. And, it was the first film I made after being pregnant, and it was great to have that kind of support.
See, that's wonderful, because it's not like you're suddenly going to become an invalid or something. You know what I mean? I remember the shock the media had. Emerald Fennell, what was the film she just won the Oscar for? What was
Promising Young Woman.
Promising Young Woman. The big shock in the media was that she was pregnant while directing it, and you just think, well, she wasn't actually ill.
I was literally directing until I gave birth. It was like...
Good for you. Poppy, do you think that the way we've been working through COVID has in some ways been beneficial to women in showing that there are other ways other than turning up at, 10 till 5 or whatever to do jobs?
Oh, yeah, I definitely agree with Jenny. But then you go down the Guardian hole and then you read things like women are having to juggle motherhood and their work and the housework and do everything else. And there was an article about female scientists not being able to publish as much work. But I think ultimately it's been great, because what we're doing is we're showing these TV production companies and the channels that we're not skiving, we are actually working. And what's great is, I actually hate working in an office. I don't mind working. I'm in the office today. I just like it for the banter, and I like to wear a nice dress, but I actually prefer working from home. And it's just, you're not chained to a computer for 8 hours a day and then slumping after 2. You wake up, if you've got kids, you drop the kids off, you do yoga, you come back, you work late in the night. And I think actually flexible working hours has, like Jenny said, has hurtled us into the future, because it shows that you don't have to be chained to this Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. So I think ultimately it has been a good thing, but I'm not a mum. I'm not managing a house. I think what I've been hearing from my female friends with kids is that they have way more to do because they're always at home. And my life has changed since watching Motherhood, because I'm like, oh my God, this is literally every woman I know's life. This is exactly what happens. So I think ultimately it's a good thing. I think it gives us the flexibility that we really desperately needed. But it does come with some caveats, like, you just have to do more laundry.
Yeah, and also...
And the flip side of COVID is it's a lot of production companies are giving people contracts where, I was talking to someone about it the other day, where you're on a week's notice, but then you're not allowed to work for anyone else for 3 weeks, just in case something changes for COVID or something, which is like this massive assumption that, freelancers can just afford to not work for... And that kind of thing just really, really works against women, particularly, I think.
If you're at home, how do they know what you're doing? That's this extraordinary thing that you're 3 weeks just sitting in the garden.
They send you 55 bloody Zoom invites. That's how they know that you're. That's how they know you're working with someone else. Oh my God! If there's one thing we can do now is a Zoom. Like sometimes I have some people like, "Can we do a Zoom?" I'm like, "No, we can just make a phone call like normal people."
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Rose, has the whole COVID thing changed the way you work, darling? Has it been difficult for you?
Yes, I think it has been difficult for me. I am a single person. I don't live on my own. I live with a housemate, but I don't have kids. And in many ways, that has been a blessing. I haven't had to deal with a lot of the humongous stress and heartache that people with a lot of family responsibilities have had to deal with. But for me, I think I crave being around other people at work. I function best with the structure of of deadlines and having to be places at certain times and meet people at certain times, and that is just not really replicatable with Zoom. So for me, I just cannot wait to get back into an office. It can't come soon enough. It's nice to be out shooting again. I've recently started that, so I'm encouraged and starting to feel a bit more like myself as a person and as a director.
It's very interesting because we're in the business of making film, but I don't know anybody on television who actually likes Zoom, which is sort of as though we're making television at the time. And my wife is a psychotherapist, and she's been reading lots of analysis of it. And apparently, we just don't pick up the same social cues on Zoom that we do when we're in a room with somebody. We just don't read
Absolutely.
people as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't like text messaging. I'd always rather phone somebody and just say hi, because the text message seems to me always to be misinterpreted in some way. And I also, I mean, this is my office, and I've been in here for months writing a book, but there's no banter. It's much rather be in the studio with everybody. It would be nice. Let's look at the role of. Go on.
Oh no, I was just going to say. I mean, Zoom brings a humongous amount of self-awareness, which I hate. It's really hard to properly lose yourself in a conversation, I think, and we all know why. It's because we've got a sort of phantom image of ourselves staring back at us the whole time. So yes, you don't get that in a studio, and you don't get that in an office, thankfully.
And it's really hard remote filming. I mean, it's just, being in a room with someone, you just have that chemistry, don't you? But it's really hard to do when you're doing it with a, crew on the other side of the world.
Yeah, no, I'm here to tell you that Zoom audiences, we just recorded I do a show called QI, and we had a Zoom audience of 700. And there's literally watching people eat their dinner in bed. There's one woman who was
God.
There was one elderly couple who kept saying, "What did she say?"
Zoom is the worst. Do you remember in the first lockdown, like everyone was like, "Let's do a pub quiz," and I was like, "No, I'm not doing a pub quiz. I'll see you in the actual pub when it's allowed."
It's not for me. Anyway, quizzes are what I do for a living. So I want to talk about the role of the producer. I can't remember. One of you said that there are a lot of female producers, and that's because we're good at the multi-skilling. I think it was you, Jenny, who was talking about that. What is the thing about women breaking into directing? Do you think it's that women are afraid to shoot? Rose, you're directing at the moment. What do you think has been the firewall that's stopping more women directors breaking through?
Well, I think, as Jenny said, women tend to make good producers. I'm painting with a hugely broad brush here, but one of the things that I think we don't often say about television, but I imagine all of us on this call can probably identify with the fact that making a TV program is a process that it's basically held together by favors and kindness and people doing things for you, not because you can pay them a lot of money, but because they like you and they buy into you and they believe in what you're trying to create, whether that's a contributor or a location or an amazing piece of access. It tends to, there's a lot of emotional engagement that goes into producing that kind of access, and a lot of emotional labor, which is basically what it is. And I think women, again, painting with a broad brush, tend to be very good at that because emotional labor is demanded of women in all aspects of their lives. And so bringing it to bear in the workplace, sort of comes naturally. We don't ask men to expend that emotional energy in the same way that we ask women to do it. So I think you end up with lots of women who make very good producers, and lots of men who sort of don't necessarily
Can't be asked. Can't be
naturally,
asked.
or can't be asked. Yeah,
Can't be asked.
but I do think there's a kind of lack of imagination quite a lot of the time, and unconscious bias on the behalves of the people who make the decisions, and they'll think, oh well, she's an excellent producer, she's produced for us brilliantly a couple of times, so let's get her to do that because she's a safe pair of hands. This guy, unknown quantity, we don't know what sort of a producer he'll make, so let's see what he's like as a director. And that is so toxic and so incredibly stressful and detrimental to women's careers. And that's why you end up with a lot of women who want to direct but aren't ever given that opportunity.
I also wonder, do
I
you think
it's
that
also
there's
a
any...
confidence issue. Yeah, sorry.
Yes.
No, please, Jenny.
You know, sorry. I just think, like, you know, confidence and assertiveness are really highly valued, but that doesn't actually necessarily equate to talent. You know, I think historically women are less confident just from the way we sort of been conditioned and all the rest of it. But you know, I think, as I said before, I think that men are seen much more for their potential than women are. You know.
But I also wonder if it's that traditionally directing is seen as not just an artistic expression, but a technical one. So you ought to know about how the cameras work and all those things, and women on the whole maybe think that they don't have the confidence for that. I did a whole series of lockdown videos for YouTube. My wife shot them on an iPhone, and we both realised, we both went, but this is really easy. The camera just does it for you. I had no idea. I thought, why have they made this such a big deal? This is so easy to do this. Poppy, do you think there's an issue of women thinking that actually there's a lot of technology and I'm not sure I dare to get involved with it?
Yeah, so I totally agree with what Rosemary and Jenny were saying. I think for me, it was a confidence thing. It's taken me, working in TV for 8 years, and it's taken me 8 years to pick up a camera. Exactly, rather embarrassingly for those reasons. I was like, oh, it's, you know, men do it. And it was just embarrassing to have to admit this now, but it was the truth. And I also was working on productions where I wasn't necessarily encouraged to pick up a camera. I was encouraged to produce. So it's multifaceted.
Exactly.
It's a perfect storm of all those things the ladies have just said. Plus, if you're also inherently not very confident and you're working on a production where your serious producer isn't necessarily saying, hey, take this camera, go and shoot this scene, then it does foster this kind of, oh, maybe I shouldn't. So, it's taken me 8 years to do it. And it was just by chance and opportunity. And I just thought, you know what? I saw so many women, female directors sort of in the last 3-4 years. And actually what was beautiful, and this is really bad, is I was in an edit and this editor turned around and said to me, you could shoot this better than this guy. And I don't know why that gave me so much confidence. I mean, this guy didn't get basic listening shots, cutaway shots, and it shouldn't do, but it instilled in me some confidence because I thought, and I said to him, I can't shoot. And he's like, no, you don't understand. You could do better than this guy. And this guy still gets jobs, by the way. But anyway, so I think, I don't know, that kind of comment is what I needed to kind of pick up a camera. And then once you're doing it, it's like riding a bike, you get thrown in the deep end and then off you go. I'm not saying I'm amazing. I'm still learning.
Exciting. And then it's exciting. It's actually very exciting. You
oh
go,
my God,
I can do this.
I absolutely loved it, Sandi. My biggest regret is not picking up a camera 8 years ago. Biggest regret. Because once I started, I was like, this is amazing. Why am I only doing it now? So, but there was definitely a fear for my, I speak for myself. There was definitely a fear.
I wonder if that has to do with...
See, this wouldn't have happened in a real life panel. This only happens in Zoom.
Jenny, you wanted to say something.
No. Rose first.
Rose.
Oh, thanks, Jenny. Well, no, I was going to say, I wonder, Poppy, if that has to do with the fact that there is a real lack of visibility of older female self-shooters, experienced self-shooting directors, particularly, obviously, self-shooting directors of colour as well. So I think, it's that old chestnut of if you can't see it, it's harder to be it. And I know that I definitely felt that when I was, sort of at entry level. It didn't occur to me that I might be good at shooting for quite a long time because I I couldn't really sort of imagine myself. I couldn't picture myself doing it in the same way.
Well, you mentioned
And it really
age.
isn't rocket science. You know,
This is what
like,
everyone says to me.
everyone
Yeah.
can do it. It's just like really, and I just think men are just much, much better at bullshitting, basically, than women.
Yeah.
And even in directing, I mean, you know, in all directing, I think basically you just need to make a decision, whether it's a good or bad decision, and have that confidence that you've made that decision and go with it. And I think that's especially true in drama, where there are even fewer female directors, you know, because you've got a massive crew and everything. But I just think, I mean, I think there is a bit of an issue with I mean, I think basically sort of junior women should definitely be encouraged to just pick up a camera, like, you know, at researcher level and start shooting. But I also think there's a conversation to be had with manufacturers, because I just think most cameras are made for the male body, and it'd be really great if you had a camera which worked around tits. You know, it's just like sometimes.
Can we put a call out at Sheffield Doc Fest right now, Jenny? That is easy rigs, cameras. It's like also left-handed people. All the buttons are on the other side. It's just ergonomically so not designed for women.
Definitely. Yeah. And actually, one of the best things to happen in the last year is the network that Claire Richards set up, that if anyone in the audience who's a director isn't a member, you should definitely join us. It's called We Are Doc Women, and it's a really fantastic sort of peer-to-peer network group where we just troubleshoot everything from technical questions to juggling kids to jobs. And it's just there's really nice camaraderie. All of the directors on the panel are members, aren't we? I think we are all. And yeah, it's really great to have. It's the first time anything like that has existed, but it's brilliant.
Alex, I want to come on to how women are portrayed on television. Now, you were a presenter, and am I right that you decided to retire from presenting at 30?
Yeah, I did.
Well, I mean, I wish to discuss ageism for a brief moment, and how women are portrayed, and sometimes how I think women can get stick if they're too attractive, too sexual. Then other women maybe will give them stick for that as well. So talk to me about what you see on television and the way in which women are portrayed.
Well, I was kind of unique in that I started out as sort of like a Playboy model, page 3 girl, and then I broke into mainstream TV almost accidentally. And I mean, I never set out to be a TV presenter. An opportunity just came up, and they were like, "Can you present TV?" And I was just like, "A man." I was just like, "Yeah." And like, I didn't really think about whether I could do it or not. I was just like, "Yeah, I can do that." Yeah, like, and I got my own show on like some obscure channel that no one ever watched on satellite, and that got me a show reel, and that got me into TV. So by the time I was 26, I think, I was working for MTV in Europe. I worked for Radio 1 for a short time as a game specialist, and then I went to work in America for a gaming network, gaming show over there that was a really big deal, but I'd never seen it, so I still haven't really watched it, the channel that I was on. And I don't know, like, I kind of knew that I was being hired to be a dolly bird, but I also knew that I was being hired because I knew a lot about games. And this was before Gamergate, and there was a big backlash against women in games just after I quit, actually. I actually found it to be quite accepting of me having a personality and interests, and you know, that it was like almost as if my looks got me through the door, but then it was what I knew that kept me there. But I always had this like insecurity about the way that I looked, because everyone around me was telling me that, you know, you can only do this until you're 30, and then you're going to have to find something else because you can't do this forever. And, you know, I was hearing that from my nan, I was hearing that from my agent, and just society at large, because, you know, we don't see older women in public or on TV that much. And I honestly think it's a corporate thing. it's a way to sort of prey on our insecurities to make us buy more beauty products. You know, it really is that see-through, but we all play into it. So yeah, I mean, I was going through other things when I was at that age, but I think I came to like a fork in my career. I was with the same agent as Caroline Flack, and I got to a point where it's like, right, it's getting a bit harder now. Like, I can stop and go and trot off and have a normal life, or I can carry on and I can take this path where it goes, and I can be really famous. And I didn't want it. At that point in my life, I was like, I don't really want that. I don't think I'm stable enough for that. I think that would ruin me. So I walked away and started a family.
I think that was. I think it was brave. There's a comment from the audience. Charlotte Parry Jones says, "I'm an older woman and self-shooter. I struggle to see myself in the industry, but I keep going despite all the obstacles, and thank you for this discussion." I think diversity generally, I do think there is a dearth of older women, certainly. What about other forms of diversity? Poppy, what is your view about how women are portrayed on television?
Oh God! I mean, the fact that they're still talking about the D word is just. I mean, I just go to these diversity events for the free food. I'm not even joking. You know, it's like, what's the point? You know what I mean? Like, we just talk about it all the time. Okay, so I guess things are changing on screen. I mean, they're not. I don't know. I think they're changing a bit in drama. I think Americans kind of lead the way in terms of diversity on screen. I think diversity in production is awful. In the 8 years I've been in TV, I've worked with 2 black PDs. I think that's shameful and disgusting. I'm Bangladeshi. I've worked with 1 Bangladeshi researcher. I think conversation, again, people are talking, the tide is changing, but the change is so slow. So I don't know. I think fundamentally, I think the British TV industry is quite risk averse. They sort of just follow YouTube, don't they? They don't set trends. They're quite reactive. But that's my view. Don't know if I've talked myself out of a job now.
No. I think everything. Sorry.
Please, Jenny.
No, I just think I totally agree with everything you're saying, and I just think it still needs radical change. I mean, only 8% of directors are non-white. I mean, it's just crazy. You know, it's men and women. It's mad, you know. Like just before this panel started, actually, I was phoned up and asked if I wanted to direct a really big series about a black subject. And I was just like, no, you need to get a black director. And they were saying, oh, well, everyone's busy, so-and-so's busy, so-and-so's busy. And I just said, well, why don't you get someone who's like not ready yet? And then, you know, I'm really happy to come, you know, I'm sure there are lots of people who'd be really happy to support them and help them with a job like that, you know. And I think that kind of thing needs to happen just so, you know, much faster, because all those official schemes just don't work, you know. Really.
I think one of the problems is if you don't see yourself on television, if you don't see yourself portrayed in any way, an older person or whatever, I think it's then difficult to think that you have a place there. Rose, what do you think? What do you think about?
Well, I mean, I have thoughts. I have thoughts about lesbians specifically.
I have a lot of those. I have a lot of those thoughts.
Let us talk. I mean, I think with lesbians, strangely, I think we're actually more visible on screen than we ever have been before, in Factual and in drama, and you know, in advertising as well. You know, that's an area where, particularly, I feel like at the moment there is a kind of hyper visibility of lesbians. You know, I'd switch on the TV and I feel like I'm always seeing female couples trying to flog me something, but I think what we can't afford to do is to confuse that superficial visibility for true representation, because you know we're still in a world, again, you know, I'm just talking about lesbians here and queer women, but you know, we're still in a world where the most historically marginalized and silenced types of lesbian are never on TV. You know, you very rarely, if ever, hear from a transgender lesbian or a Muslim lesbian. You know, that those voices are absent from the discourse and from our screens. And our lesbian stories as well are, even within LGBT storytelling, they're completely sidelined. So, you know, you'll get a show like the beautiful, magnificent It's a Sin, which was wonderful and we all enjoyed it, but it was an example of a show which managed to completely elide the contribution of lesbians to that chapter in LGBT history. And you know, I just watched it and I thought, how did that happen? You know, within LGBT storytelling, that has still somehow happened. So there is still massive work to do, because it is not enough to be seen but not heard.
It's also interesting. Do you remember the Olivia Colman film, The Favourite? So it was Queen Anne, and one of the things that Queen Anne was a brilliant woman and a brilliant foreign policy person, and it was portrayed as her being mad, and partly mad made her have lesbian sex, which is just a rumor that was put about her enemies at the time to deny her the power that she had. And I thought, nobody's ever going to make another film about her. Why are we having this take on it, which is just old gossip, basically, as opposed to telling us the true story of this woman? And to me, there's a huge issue about how we portray not just women today, but women of the past. You know, that I think, Alex, we're talking about in terms of, you know, burlesque and so on, there were some fabulous women who ran their own careers and were extraordinary performers. People like Josephine Baker was an extraordinary person. And we I don't know, it's all tarred with the same brush, isn't it? That it was somehow, they were not well thought of at the time, which is not really the case. So
I mean,
it's.
I mean, my one that I look up to the most is Betty Page, and she had an amazing career, but then she was buried under shame. You know, her later years were spent in madness, and because of the shame that she felt for being so underground in her career. And I think it's such a shame that these stories of great women are then followed by this like downfall where they were sort of shamed into submission. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think that those worlds are always intertwined. You know, the underground burlesque kind of people, and then the mainstream, which gets its inspiration from there. So
yeah. So we're going to run out of time unless anybody has some more questions. I just want to know if let's try and be positive. I know I started by saying I just felt a little bit low today because I was thinking, oh, I've been here most of my career. Let's find the positives. Jenny, do you have a view about positive things that could happen that might move us forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, that the more we can support people on both ends of the age thing would be, you know, really great. I mean, I feel like the fact that 12% of directors only 12% of directors are over 50, I think is really shocking. And I just think audiences are missing out. You know, I think in drama, a lot of female directors, or most female directors, are over 55, and they're seen at the prime of their creativity and artistry. But I don't see the same thing in docs. You know, there's this idea that it's really cool to be a silver fox, and there's, you know, as a woman not. So I think that is changing, and I think COVID's changing things for parents. And I think we just all, as Poppy says, we just need to make sure that, you know, we go forwards and not backwards, and we don't stay still.
Alex, are you optimistic, my lovely?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to sort of dismiss women as having a sort of critical gaze, and I do think that is something that we need to confront, is that we can be quite critical of one another. So if going forward we could look at having a kinder gaze and bringing that into the mainstream, you know, more empathy and you know, trying to identify people that aren't seen, and seeing new people that are just normally hidden away in the background because male directors don't want to see them. I think if we can do that and bring more kindness into the mainstream, then that would be brilliant. Like,
that would get my vote, I have to say. Rose, what about you, my love?
I'm fairly optimistic. Yeah, I mean, I think women are beginning to organise, and we're seeing support networks for women, self-organised support networks starting to develop. Jenny mentioned We Are Doc Women, the Facebook group, which has supported lots of people so far. There are lots of other similar groups out there as well, where women are starting to connect and offer solutions to each other. I'm also starting to get a sense, just to sort of link into what Alex was saying, of the idea that when we lift women up, that really has to include all women, and it has to include women whose voices have been pushed right to the back. So to be working with Alex on a documentary about sex workers is it's very, very meaningful and very exciting for me, and I feel very honoured to be trusted by Al and her business partner Vaughn to do that. And I think that is hopefully a sign of a step in the right direction, that we are including all women in our efforts to move things forward.
Poppy?
I completely agree with everything the ladies have just said, and we are one half of the human bloody species, and we're not going away. We're not going away. We're here, we're making noise, but we're absolutely not going away. Look, if there's another panel about this in 10 years' time, it'll be really depressing, but we're here to stay.
I'll probably be dead by then, so one of you will have to take over. Sophie has commented. I hope not. I hope I'm going to outlast the long life milk in the fridge. Sophie is commenting, I'm just starting out in the industry as a development researcher. Luckily, I work with some amazing women who've encouraged me to pick up the camera and shoot. This discussion is really encouraging, so thank you. And I don't know what that noise is. As one of you needs lunch, I think. That's a very strange noise. Thank you, all of you. It's been so fascinating. And I actually think I've gone from feeling slightly depressed at the beginning to feeling heartened, because you four are extraordinary and going to make extraordinary work. I mean, to the point, if one of you wants to ring me and say, would I strip off for a thing? I'm here. I'm here for you. I will now do this. That's where we've got to. Thank you for bringing banter to my otherwise quiet office. Thank you for taking the time. Rosemary, Alex, Jenny, Poppy, I think you're absolutely fantastic, and I cannot wait to see the work that you do next. I very much hope that you've enjoyed yourselves, and thank you to the Sheffield Doc Fest 2021 for making this happen. Let's hope next time we can talk about something else, but we can do it in person. Everybody up for that? Are we up for that? Shall we re-meet, the five of us?
Yeah.
Take care.